Okay, I'm going to begin and welcome you to this session where we've invited some representatives from various professional organizations to be in dialogue with us, with INSS, about how they see ways that we can coordinate our efforts. I'll remind you that the original intent of INSS was to bring together practitioners in fields like engineering, planning, health professionals, safety professionals, and bring them together with academics who are studying various aspects of social sustainability so that we can hear from them how we can help, and they can tell us what kinds of information they need to know from us. And so today we've got a wonderful panel representing the American Society of Civil Engineers, the American Planning Association, and the National Academy of Engineering. So closest to me on my left is Rachelle Hollander. She's with the National Academy of Engineering Center for Engineering Ethics and Society, and she directs that program. She is on our advisory board, and she's been an invaluable member of our team since the inception of INSS. Robert Kerns, in the middle, is with the American Planning Association, and he's their Sustainable Communities Division Chair, and we are delighted to welcome Robert. And on the end is Richard Wright. I've known Richard for many years, and Richard's been really instrumental in pushing the sustainability agenda in the American Society of Civil Engineers. He wears a variety of hats. Right now he chairs their Infrastructure Education Committee. He also works on their climate change initiatives, and he's here today as a member of the National ASCE Sustainability Committee, which is a very active group. So I'll be quiet and let them speak to you. We'll start with Rachelle, and then Robert, and then Richard. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helene. It sounds like my microphone is on and working, and that's fantastic. I'm happy to be speaking with you this morning. I told Helene to just interrupt me when my 15 minutes are up. So I'm going to start with, she sent us out very kindly a list of questions to try to address. I'm going to start with the last question because it's one that I'd like to get to, and as it comes last, I might not otherwise. So it's a question about what INSS members might help us with, tools that INSS might help us identify. And we at the Center for Engineering Ethics and Society at the National Academies, we have a new project to enhance our online ethics center. I don't know if you've used or looked at the online ethics center, but it's just called onlineethics.org. It's very easy to find. Quite a few students and faculty use it. They use it often for issues involving engineering ethics and research ethics. We want to enhance our resources in the area of sustainability, and of course in the area of social sustainability. We have a list of topics right now on the site that people can click on and then go to. And environment, safety, and sustainability is one of those. So please, if you have syllabi, if you have resources that you found to be useful in the college classroom or other learning environments that we might have some of our editorial boards review and then put up on the site, or if that's not possible, perhaps even link to, we would love to hear from you. So you have my name and email address in the conference book, and you can send me I would love to hear from you about those. I also help to lead the research group for this network, and if you're interested, or if you have a contribution that you would like to make sure we know about, please also communicate with me about that. Now, I was asked to tell you a bit about our professional organization and its mission with respect to sustainability. I'm not going to tell you about what the National Academies is doing as an organization itself to address issues of sustainability. It is doing things, but I can tell you that social sustainability isn't high on its agenda. It's more concerned with environmental sustainability. However, in terms of its mission, first, sustainability and sustainability research is a research classification that right now is of great interest to the federal R&D agencies. So, through the Office of Science and Technology Policy and the National Science and Technology Council, the notion of sustainability provides a boundary object which each individual R&D agency can use to promote its priorities. So, for instance, EPA has one view, NSF has one view. You can run through the list of federal agencies that support research and development, and you will see that they have a sustainability research and development agenda. The National Academies was founded as a federally chartered, nonprofit, honorary membership organization to provide scientific and technical advice relevant to policy matters to the federal government. So it does projects and issues reports, most often when called upon by the federal agencies to respond to a policy-related matter. In this case, what we're talking about is a policy-related matter relevant to sustainability and relevant to sustainability issues for the United States. So, through its operational arm, the National Research Council, it has a number of programs with activities such as consensus conferences that then issue consensus reports that address sustainability and that address social sustainability. So I can run through numerous examples and mention a few of the programs that are involved. So the Government University Industry Research Roundtable looked at issues of international research collaboration. There you can see that they're thinking about social sustainability in terms of the research, the institutions of science and engineering that are social institutions and how we sustain and promote them in an international environment. The Transportation Research Board, our keynote speaker has been called on under committees that have been put together by the Transportation Research Board to address issues of transportation or relevant to transportation where social sustainability is one factor. My center began its activities by doing a workshop and a workshop report on engineering, social justice, and sustainable community development. And we just recently completed a report on climate change, engineered systems, and society. The Division of Policy and Global Affairs has a Science and Technology for Sustainability program where numerous reports about sustainable agriculture have been issued. And those findings involve numerous divisions in the National Research Council, Agriculture and Human Resources, Earth and Life Sciences, and probably a good many of them involve the Social and Behavioral Sciences and Education Research Board. The EPA, we have reports such as Sustainability Concepts in Decision Making, Tools and Approaches for the EPA. You see in the summary chapter of that report many mentions of sustainability and a good number of uses of the word social, usually as part of a general view involving social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And you can find often in these reports the definitions that various federal agencies are using for that concept of sustainability. And they often refer to an executive order that comes from the Office of the President that talks about how it defines sustainability as a process rather than a goal. I think the National Academies and its various boards and the projects that are where committees are put together in order to address this issue recognize that sustainability must incorporate social, economic, environmental, and technological dimensions. But the individual and institutional roles shape the priorities for considering these dimensions. So I think there's not a great understanding or appreciation for the need to examine or highlight social sustainability in science and technology policy. If you look at the publications that have come out from the National Academy Press, which is the press that generally publishes all of the Academy's reports, and they are all available online and can be downloaded or read online for free. You'll see when I just hit on searching the results of the National Academy's Press for social sustainability, I got 133 hits, a lot of resources, but they don't provide a well enough structured focus on social sustainability to define and get buy-in to a research agenda with that focus. I think that, when asked whether there's a gap between what practitioners are ready to provide and what clients want and are willing to pay for, well, the clients for the National Academies are the federal agencies. So this is an open question as to what extent the issue of social sustainability can rise to the level where the federal agencies see this as something that has enough research, that has been completed, has enough findings, has enough of a bounded frame in which a committee could come together and address this question of a research agenda for social sustainability. Because before the National Academies could do such a project, they have to have a lot that they can draw on. They aren't going to go out and do a lot of independent research themselves. They need to be pulling together the experts that can highlight a few core issues and provide a report that then would be relevant to federal policy in this area. I'd say that in general, there's this overall need. Then the social factors that tend to be emphasized in the reports and the projects that our organization has done are issues such as those focused on a particular socio-technical problem, such as food or water. Manufacturing is a recent addition, urban infrastructures and questions of disasters and resilience in the face of climate change, big issue. Equity is there, but tends to be thought of in terms of these particular questions or problems. Perhaps place-based problems need more attention. The importance of peace to sustainability, I think, has generally been overlooked. And there's a tendency in approaching these issues for experts to define the social dimensions of sustainability as how can we get people to do what we know or have decided is best. This is unlikely to win hearts and minds. And I will end with that.
I'm going to move over here so I can actually see the slide presentation. So my name is Rob Kerns, and I am the chair of the Sustainable Communities Division for APA, the American Planning Association. And I'm not going to pretend to try and represent all of APA, because I'm one of actually 14 divisions. We have a very broad based set of issues representing a lot of different stakeholders in community planning. I think what I can say is that for my entire career of now over 17 years as a planner, sustainability has been at the core of the American Planning Association's mission and action plan. But I've also observed over my time in my career that it has gone through a progressive evolution of understanding of what sustainability is. And it even wasn't called sustainability when I started. It was smart growth or guiding growth, and now it's sustainability. And there are other terms being used such as resiliency and public health. And so some of this follows funding patterns, some of it follows, I think particular times and political agendas, but I think at the core are basic values of trying to sustain, maintain, steward communities on the part of the American Planning Association. So that just sort of provides, a basis for, in terms of my organization's mission, I think that's the perspective and long-term commitment that the association brings. Next weekend, though, we're actually going to be gathering in Seattle for our national conference, and the theme is sustainability. And what a better place than Seattle, which is one of the pioneering cities, breaking lots of boundaries in this regard. So we continue to push the edge and look for the areas. And so that's why I'm pleased to be here today, because I think social sustainability is one of the areas, I think, physical and economic models. We actually have many of them. The social side is softer, less measured, and I think it's an area that, as I observe in my practice, that it's often the social side, and particularly leadership, that will direct the physical and economic side to actually integrate sustainability. So I'm pleased to be talking about this aspect of sustainability today. In terms of the progression in APA, we've gone really from thinking more about the physical, environmental, conservation ideas of sustainability, I think, early on in my career, to moving to what we called the 3 E's of environment, economy, and equity, or environment, economy and social aspects. But then I think most recently, the last 5 years, there's been a lot of push to say, let's break the silos down. If we're going to make strides in each of these 3 components, we've got to be able to cross-pollinate interdisciplinary dialogue at all scales. I'm the development division chief in Alexandria, Virginia, and so I do everything from master planning of the city to arguing about road design or a trail with the developer. And I have to work with schools, housing, public art, transportation, stormwater management. I have a committee every week that sits down from all those departments, and we have to integrate across scales to address all of these areas in the city of Alexandria. But I think what's also exciting now is not only are we working to break those silos down, but we're also saying, maybe, can we go beyond sustainable, and can we actually reach for restorative? So I think that's a question and a challenge to particularly the academics in the room of, is there a way that we can actually capture back some of the losses or the degradation that have occurred on the various systems in our communities? And So that's sort of the cutting edge as I see it, and I think as many of my practitioners see it in terms of the trajectory of sustainability. It's very timely that we're going to Seattle and the conference here today in terms of what I can report about APA, because there's two very important initiatives that are currently underway that are vehicles to help us move forward on thinking about sustainability. And if I could just advance slides, I'm going to jump through here. Keep going. I'm going to go through the principles, just jump through the principles. Okay, here. So this was just released. It's a Planning Advisory Service report number 2, and it's part of our Sustaining Places initiatives. This is all on the American Planning Association website, and it's really the seminal work of comprehensive plans are by far probably the largest and most effective tool we have to integrate all of these scales and all of these disparate agendas in terms of sustainability and embody them in a vision and a comprehensive set of goals in a community. And so this new guide is excellent in terms of going through the array of all of the various components of sustainability as well as other parts of planning. So I'm just going to run through, next slide please. It's set up so that in the guide we have principles, which are the normative statements of sort of our goals of how we're going to, what we're striving for, providing those for communities to follow, and then processes, how do you get there in terms of your vision, and then the attributes are the nuts and bolts of making it happen in the way the guide's set up. The principles, this gives you a sense of the breadth of the comprehensive planning and sustainability aspects touched on. So we're looking at livable environment, which is the more the physical aspects I talked about earlier, but also natural systems and ecosystems, number 2. Resilient economy. We got to be able to pay for all this stuff and maintain economic systems, balancing conservation and expansion in terms of economic investment. A fourth, and this is probably most relevant for today, but the idea of interwoven equity. How do, as we grow and prosper and sustain our communities, how do we have broad-based equity and sharing in the success of our communities? And then fifth is the idea of healthy communities, sustaining our bodies, our ecosystems. This is really an area that's really been growing in the planning field. You know, we're not just always sort of expanding, but how do we maintain our physical and ecosystem health? And then sixth is responsible regionalism. I think where we've realized that to bring a lot of these aspects together, whether it's watersheds, ecosystems, transportation systems, affordable housing, it's at the regional scale where you can actually most effectively have most of those conversations. And so that's why number 6 is so important. And even the federal government has recognized that with their, with their HUD, EPA, and DOT initiatives for the Sustainable Communities initiative over the last 5 years. But now they're looking at sort of resilient communities and disaster preparedness. But all of this stuff is looking at regions and addressing these various topics. So next slide. So looking at interwoven equity and just providing a statement in the guide for addressing this principle, the idea of ensuring fairness and equity and providing for housing, services, health, safety, and livable needs of all citizens and groups. So you can see where there are particular drivers under this idea of equity: housing, health, access to services, things like daycare, et cetera. So how do we get these very basic needs of human beings and provide the physical access and fairness? And this is a real challenge, and I'm going to get to that in a moment. But just so you understand sort of the aspects of social sustainability or equity that we're talking about. Next slide. So under the best practices portion of this aspect in the comprehensive guide, you'll see providing a range of housing types and communities, so we have diversity. the idea of a jobs-house balance, so people can not only have their housing, but get to their jobs and not have an exorbitant commute cost in terms of equity and sustainability. The idea of planning for the improvements in at-risk or distressed neighborhoods. Neighborhoods go through life cycles, but how do we sort of soften those gentrification or recycling, redevelopment of communities and cities, and so that we can achieve that social sustainability while recognizing change and the economic systems at play, particularly being sensitive to disadvantaged groups and neighborhoods. The idea of planning for improved health and safety, again, with at-risk populations in particular, because they often have less access to resources to maintain their health and safety. Looking at the public services, whether they're schools or libraries or hospitals, having equitable access to these resources within minority and low-income populations is another area that needs to be maintained and focused on in our community planning efforts. Moving to the infrastructure side or the engineering side, it's how do we have our infrastructure in cities maintained. Most of our urban patterns are continuing to invest at the edges, expanding at the edges of our cities, while our inner cities have massive infrastructure that is being underutilized. The city of Philadelphia is built for a 2.5 million population and only has about 1 million people in it today. Just to give you a stark number. But we're continuing to spread out and build new highways, new light rail, and other things at the edges. How do we get those investments to be balanced to address the equity and access issues in terms of 4.6? Looking at workforce diversity and development. So really needing to address the access that people have to jobs, livable wages, and fields that where there have not been the career ladders that different groups could have more access to. 4.8, again, there's this pattern of vulnerable, populations being in the way of natural hazards. How do we, again, from an equity and fairness standpoint, try and make sure that all people are out of the way? Did a plan for Biloxi, Mississippi. All of the people that were in the harm's way of that hurricane were mostly disadvantaged populations, fishermen and their families. A lot of the other people were inland. And doing a growth plan for Biloxi's future, how do we balance those infrastructure investments and where people need to live and thrive while maintaining the historic neighborhoods of Biloxi? 4.9, again, getting back to this idea of peace and justice, needing to really promote, environmental justice and the aspects of considering those as a part of the array of the comprehensive plan. So, next slide. So I know that I've gone through sort of a broad array of ideas, but I think it shows how through the comprehensive planning process and where the American Planning Association's at, these are the ideas that we're pushing, and providing tools for communities to be able to ask questions about, provide policies on, to be able to integrate all aspects of sustainability, including interwoven equity. I would be remiss if I didn't say that all of this, all of the planning efforts that have to occur and all the questions that we're asking as part of the idea of comprehensive planning it all needs to be built on authentic participation. It can't be, a few people in a back room, creating some, great lofty ideas. We have wonderful technologies today of keypad polling, of our smartphones, of, you can just walk on a city street, and log your vote or take a picture of something and send it in. I like this as a part of my community. And there's wonderful models out there now to really allow people who don't want to come into a meeting room, who might be rather shy at standing up and speaking, to really put their voice into the process. So there's the whole comprehensive planning component. in terms of what APA is doing. The other aspect is that we're currently updating our actual sustainability policy guide at APA, which affects federal through mostly state level initiatives. And there, again, it's really the same themes that we're addressing in the comprehensive plan, but we're embodying them in our policy advocacy as well. So in the fall, the APA board is going to be adopting an updated sustainability policy guide. The last one was done in the year 2000, so it's quite dated, and we recognize that needs to be updated as well. I'm going to jump to, just in the interest of time today, the one question about what does my association of practitioners, what are questions we would have for you? Through working on the update of the policy guide and through working on the comprehensive planning standards that I just went through, I think there's three areas that are particularly interesting to think about. We're constantly trying to measure these things. How do we get better metrics? If we're going to track and understand, are we progressing, are we moving the needle on these aspects, the social sustainability side, what a lot of practitioners consider the softer side of the sciences, we need to have measurements, things like wellness indexes, access to health care. How do we measure equity, the aspects of equity, as well as, we have different measurements for affordable housing, but also the location of housing and the jobs housing balance. All of these various things we really could advance and measure better with data at various scales. The second area I think is particularly important. We have an affordable housing crisis in this country. It's particularly coming in from the Washington, D.C. area. We just can't do enough. But our core cities, the demographics, our core cities are growing again. But they're pushing the disadvantaged populations, they're shifting them. And but we also want affordable families, people that need help in terms of housing and affordable housing to be in core cities where the infrastructure is. That's what helps create the affordability. So we have these tensions in our growth policies and in affordable housing, and I think that's a continued area that we just need really innovative ideas. And I was really fascinated with the co-housing plug that I heard earlier, that those are the kinds of ideas we need in thinking about how do we have affordability and live together and maybe share some of the costs. The third area is, and this relates more to comprehensive planning and this new area that we're looking at APA called smart cities, where we're looking at how are people going to work in 10 years from now. There is a fundamental shift going on in the office market in this country. Everything from the federal government to Citicorp they're downsizing their office floor plates. They're basically, you don't have a desk. You share a desk with 3 other people. You have a reservation. You take your laptop in and out, and you're on your cell phone or your iPad. And you're working at Starbucks, or you're working out of your car, or you're working out of your home. So I think as academics, a real question is, what are the places where people are going to work? What do they need in their homes? What do they need in what we call third spaces, the Starbucks, the Barnes & Noble, the places where people go to meet clients because they don't want them to come to their home? That all impacts social sustainability, family, logistics, and all those relationships. And so co-housing is an interesting model on the first floors of these. Could those be places for where people work and share their livelihoods as well as social aspects? So with that, I'll stop in terms of challenging questions and look forward to further dialogue.
You're going to advance the slides?
I can.
Yeah, because I don't see a push button here anymore.
There's a keyboard there if you'd like to move it.
Oh, there we are. Okay, good. Good. Just have to pull out the shelf here. Okay, so I'm going to be giving an overview of the American Society of Civil Engineers, a strategic priority for sustainability. And that doesn't move like I thought it would.
Yeah, you can use the right arrow.
Okay, good. This is one of ASCE's 3 strategic priorities. The other one you're probably familiar with. It's the report card on the deplorable condition of America's infrastructure. And the other concern we have is called Raise the Bar, which is to increase the requirements of education for professional licensure. I'll focus on the sustainability and very much on the sustainable infrastructure side of it. Our definition is that sustainable infrastructure provides environmental, economic, and social well-being now and for the future. And of course, how are we doing in the United States? Well, we had a talk earlier in this meeting today. As you can see with the red dot, that is the USA up here. We're running at about 5 times our share of the Earth's resources. So we've got a major issue here in the U.S. To achieve sustainability. Now, it is in our Code of Ethics as Civil Engineers that we hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public and strive to comply with the principles of sustainable development in the performance of our professional duties. So it's in our Code of Ethics. We have policy statements supporting activities to reduce the impact of climate change, to provide for sustainability in our projects, and to reduce our emissions of greenhouse gases. So I'd say that we're on the side of the angels in these issues. We have a variety of efforts going on to promote sustainability in the ASCE, and I'm going to be going through these. I won't read the list to you. I'll hit them one by one. Our strategic plan calls to provide a vision of the future, to improve sustainability education, to incorporate sustainability thinking in the design and construction of infrastructure, to develop relations of trust and respect. And this comes very much into social sustainability because it speaks of trust and respect among the project team. That's, we must be trusting and respecting the planners and the architects and the landscape architects and the contractors that we are working with. And we have to have trust and respect with the stakeholders, both those who are served by our project and those who are affected by it. Another major effort for us is to communicate our role, and incidentally, one of the big groups we have to educate are our own members. We have local sections and branches all across the world. We have a section in India. We have a section in Japan, as well as in the various parts of the actual political United States. And of course, very important work with the student chapters in the universities. We engaged the board of ASCE just a couple of weeks ago to talk about the real crisis that we have with the changing conditions, such as climate change, that we have to deal with. And we set up this purpose, approved by the board now, to inspire, engage, and enable civil engineers to redefine their practices to enhance the well-being of people and communities everywhere. And we're going to have to transform how our infrastructure projects are conceived, delivered, and operated. We have 2 little slogans here. One is do the right project. It's not necessarily going to be a lot of concrete. It may be improvement of the watershed that serves the public. And the other one, of course, is to do the project right. You can make great plans, but if you don't execute through the whole life cycle, it's not going to work. We want to establish ASCE as a trusted leader and preferred resource for sustainable civil engineering practices. How many of you are familiar with the Envision Sustainable Infrastructure Rating Tool of the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure? I'll be spending a few words on this because I see not everybody has encountered it. We need to expand the capacity of our engineers to create these relationships of trust and respect. We're going to have to be working very directly with our people to develop this capability. For rating infrastructure sustainability, we've gotten together with the American Public Works Association, with the American Consortium of Engineering Companies. Those are the principals of the engineering companies. and with the civil engineers and with people at Harvard University and their ZOFNAS initiative to develop this rating system for the sustainability of infrastructure. Now, I know this isn't big enough for you all to see, and I'm not going to take you through the 40-plus criteria, but I want to say it deals with 5 major categories of criteria. One is to improve the quality of life for the people served and affected by the project. Another one is to take effective leadership in doing the right project and doing the project right. One is to be efficient in terms of our resource allocation. Another one is to be compatible with the natural world. And the 5th one is to account for the conditions of climate and risk. And out of this, and this system is intended to be applicable to all types of horizontal infrastructure. We're not going to go compete with Green Globes and the U.S. Green Building Council in terms of rating buildings, but we do want to have something that will work across all types of infrastructure to get a consistent approach to rating its sustainability. One of the committees that I chair is called our Sustainable Infrastructure Education Committee because, just as Rob pointed out, the planners didn't talk much about sustainability 15 years ago. And those who graduated from civil engineering programs 60 years ago like me, or 20 years ago like the body of the people we have working, they didn't get anything about sustainability in their education. So we have to reach out to the existing generation of engineers to bring them up to speed. So we have prepared a number. We have 12 courses that we want to prepare. We've got 6 courses that are currently available. One of them deals with the fundamentals of sustainable engineering. Another with access and mobility to integrate transportation with the built environment. One with community participation of how do you work with the community that's going to be served and affected. One dealing with ecological systems. One dealing with sustainable land use. And one with sustainable project management. We have plans for additional courses dealing with life cycle assessment in the 3 dimensions of the triple bottom line. One dealing with waste management. We have one underway with water resources. And we're looking at courses that will deal with subjects such as air quality, lighting, and noise in order to have a good portfolio of courses for our practicing engineers. We also have a formal engineering education committee that is working very closely with the university faculty and also working with ABET to be sure that the accreditation of civil engineering programs supports the development of sustainability in the educational programs. We have an Innovation in Sustainable Civil Engineering Award that we give nationally every year that picks out excellent projects and gives them an award, and we hope stimulates all the other project developers to be preparing themselves. And also, many of our local sections have sustainability committees and are having their local sustainability awards. We put up on our website sustainability project profiles so that there are examples available to engineers in practice to see what can be done when you address sustainability. We decided that we better do 2 things about the sustainability of our own activities. One is to take the 40-year-old spec office building that's ASCE's headquarters and bring it up to date in sustainability. We managed to work a LEED gold rating with the renovation of that building. The other dimension is to make our conference activities sustainable. And we've done a great deal to deal with our menus and the way we handle our breaks and so forth to develop sustainability there. We have a program of kindergarten to grade 12 outreach where we want to attract highly qualified students to come to work in civil engineering. And one of the main themes we have here is sustainability. I don't think Rachelle mentioned this, but one of the very important programs that the National Academies have is called Changing the Conversation. It used to be that we would say to young men and women, if you really love science and math, you should study engineering. We're changing that conversation to, if you really want to improve the quality of life of people, you should consider studying engineering. This dimension we think is extremely important. I think my wife has just signed me up to do some 10th grade outreach next weekend, but we'll see when I get home. I mentioned that we work very closely with our sections, branches, and student chapters, and so that, I think, is the end of the prepared presentation. We ought to have a few minutes for discussion of what you've heard this morning.
Thank you so much. I feel very heartened by how much is going on and how many opportunities there appear to be for us to make contributions to already excellent ongoing efforts. We have some time for a few questions or comments. If you want to give a shout out to one of these organizations for well done, or if you have specific questions on some initiatives or ideas for ways that we might collaborate, please, now would be the time to bring that up. Any questions, either here or at our remote sites? Yes.
Thank you all three for your presentations. Going to what Dick was just talking about in education, in your own respective fields, you have planning, we have engineering. Rachelle kind of encompasses kind of a greater thing. How does the conversation change with the educational area, the academic area, to really bring in sustainability and the social side of things to engineering, which is not known for really plugging the social side? And even in planning, it seems like things have changed. How can you influence academia for changing how they educate their students?
I was talking to Brett about this yesterday, as a matter of fact. It seems to me extremely important that in our orientation of the freshman year to engineers, that we give them an understanding of the challenges of sustainability. So they're not only learning how to do the technical work right, they're being able to understand the social and the economic and the community context. ABET requires us to have a variety of elective courses available to our students. And instead of taking modern dancing, of course it might be good for their health, they should consider getting a basic understanding of ecology, a basic understanding of, well, the communication skills are so important. One of the most valuable courses I took as an undergraduate, because I'm personally a very shy person, was public speaking. And after I got my knees to stop knocking, it turned out that I was fairly effective as a public speaker, and it's been very valuable in my career. So I think it's important that we get to the students very early so that they understand the spectrum of choices available to them and gain the background knowledge that they need in order to deal with more than the math and the science.
I would have a couple of thoughts. That first, I think there's sort of the technical aspect of the education, which I think is covered. It's really, how is that applied? I think programs, particularly professional programs and planning, need to get off campus, out of the classroom. A lot of universities now are having charrettes, or actually clients with nonprofits and communities, to do actual projects in various communities in their cities. And I think those, getting on the ground with people is invaluable, and teaches lessons that, they need to apply their technical skills. And so learn the social side of both understanding where people are coming from, what's driving them, what's important, and also how they make decisions. And I think the other area in thinking about education is interacting with leadership in communities, because it's the political side of the social sustainability piece is critical to advancing a lot of these agendas, whether it's funding or just making decisions. And so if you aren't in steps, you can have a great idea, but if you can't communicate it, as you were saying about presentations, if you can't understand where your leaders are and what's driving them from road salt, to thinking about the quality of a stream or a particular school neighborhood, you're not going to advance the sustainability agenda. So those sort of, education has to understand the sort of, engagement, taking the technical and getting out and engaging in those ways to really, I think, advance the sustainability social side of the education.
Yeah, I'd like to mention one program of the National Academy of Engineering, which is an outgrowth of the very popular Grand Challenges program that it initiated, and that really appealed to the public to help it set priorities for what were the grand engineering challenges for now and into the future. And as part of that, a lot of colleges and universities have established a Grand Challenge Scholars Program, which takes a much broader look at how these questions need to be approached. And in fact, in many cases, it's a good place for people who are interested in social sustainability to interact and challenge how that Grand Challenge Scholars Program is being shaped at their college and university, because it's a lot of the students who are involved, and faculty as well, are very open to examining the challenges in communication, the challenges from participatory action research, the challenges in doing community-based projects. And that is a big emphasis for the National Academy of Engineering in the coming year or two.
That's an excellent comment. We have two questions that have come. Okay. I'm going to have to go back out there to read it. Oh, no, it's right here, yeah. We have two questions that have come in from our other sites. I think both of these are from the UK, and they're both for Richard. The first one asks, what is the current status of Envision in terms of users? How many projects are signing on for Envision, and what do you see as the drivers for that? But then I'm going to tell you the second one too, because our time is limited, and maybe we can hit the high points on these. The second one is, you talk about rethinking infrastructure. Can you give some examples of how this is happening? In the UK, it seems that civil engineers' ideas about infrastructure are very concrete. Infrastructure means big projects and big business for engineers, and it seems very difficult to get any alternative models of provision into mainstream discussion. We seem very proud of our 19th and 20th century achievements in infrastructure provision, and engineers seem very slow to adjust to 21st century realities, including demands for social sustainability. Any thoughts on what it really means for engineers to fundamentally shift the conversation and imagination about infrastructure? So just a small point she's making here.
So I'll see if I can remember the dimensions of it to get through it. Envision is going quite well. We've made something over 20 awards already, and there's a large pipeline of projects that are now in development for evaluation. I think one of the things that's extremely exciting is about 3,000 people have qualified as Envision sustainability professionals, people who have taken the training and qualified to be able to be involved in the evaluation and the development of sustainable projects. We've got some good examples of doing the right project. One that we like to use is that the water supply system for New York City was put under pressure that you're going to have to start filtering this water that you're collecting in the Catskills. Price, $6 billion. They studied the situation and they decided that they would do watershed management instead. They spent about $2 billion working with the communities within the watershed and the farmers to control the quality of water at that point, and it was not necessary to make the filtration plant. So there's something like a 3-to-1 return economically from doing the right project.
That's a great response. But I'm a civil engineer, so I'm biased. I think that was a great answer. I think we're probably at maybe time. Oh, we have half an hour. I'm thinking we stopped at 12. I'm sorry. Great. Question in the back?
Yeah. I'm an architect, but I didn't start off that way. I actually started out in civil engineering and got introduced to the American Society of Civil Engineers very early on, and have been following pretty much throughout my adult life. And then when I had a practice in Chicago, I was actually in the same building with the APA, and I used to use their library all the time, so I'm very familiar with what the APA does. And I have to tell you, as an architect, I'm a little bit jealous about how your organizations seem to be moving much faster on this issue than my professional organization is. And my question is the movement that is going on within your organizations, was that kind of a ground up kind of a thing from the membership? Was that what drove it, or was it the leadership within your organizations that saw the need for this and really put this into motion?
I can't pretend to have been involved in the creation of it. I didn't come into it until about the year 2000, but I've talked to a number of the people who were involved in the creation, and a lot of it was based on inspired thinking by leaders of the society. 3 of the past presidents put a lot of effort into getting sustainability into the code of ethics and into our policies. And one of them, Al Grant, who was our president in 1988 and chaired our committee on sustainability for about 16 years. Unfortunately, he died on April 2nd, but he was with us for long enough to see the tremendous influence that his work has had. And of course, there's another stimulus we get, and it comes from our students. I regularly hear from the faculty that it's the students coming into the department that say, we want to be more sustainable. That's a bottom-up drive that I think is also very important.
Yeah, I think in the American Planning Association there's a similar or parallel effort with that. Actually the Sustainable Communities Division that I'm chairing is only 3 years old, and it really came out of a wave of a new generation of people really coming out of universities that said, we want to push more. And so we actually have established a division that's devoted to sort of advancing and pushing this whole aspect of planning within APA.
Thank you. Other questions? Lansing, thank you. Okay. Okay. Lansing, or you want to tell them? Okay. All right, here we go. ASCE is a founding member of the Disciplinary Associations Network for Sustainability, made up of dozens of national academic disciplinary associations all working on sustainability. Thank you for your leadership! ! How can we get more academic disciplines working together on sustainability so we can bring the unique knowledge from each of these disciplines together to address these urgent societal challenges? And I would certainly second that as a retired academic, that it is very hard for us to work across disciplines and get credit for that, to schedule courses that are in 2 different departments, and we need the help of the professional organizations championing those efforts. So I'll let you speak to this question, but I will second the question being asked.
To my knowledge, there's a lot of interest on the part of universities themselves in dealing with the sustainability of their operations. And this does tend to bring together the various disciplines within the campus in order to make their contributions to the improvement of the sustainability of the operations. I can't remember the acronym for it, but there is an organization of physical plant administrators of the universities, which to my knowledge has shown quite a bit of leadership in terms of addressing sustainability.
Okay, thank you.
On that same topic, I think there are some, at least within the engineering societies, there are some cross-society initiatives. So one is on carbon management. Yep. I don't know how active that group is, but a number, I think at least 5 societies are involved in that. So the question is whether they are thinking about the issue in a broader way than just a sort of a technological fix perspective. So I think there are some channels to do that. And there also is a group in the United States called the United Engineering Foundation that provides grants for projects that are of interest, of broad interest, and will engage with the issues that are of concern to all of the societies that are, I think there are at least 5 that are members of the United Engineering Foundation. And another place to think about having an impact about this issue is the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, which has sections, and a number of those sections often get together to put together workshops or seminars or panel sessions at the annual meeting. So that's another place where this kind of, and those specifically are interdisciplinary. So that's another place where, and international often, where this kind of, there can be a beginning of a conversation between different fields.
Also, the National Institute of Building Sciences, which is a congressionally established association that operates with its headquarters in Washington, D.C., is interesting because it not only has a very broad membership in terms of the professional societies, the architects, the landscape architects, the civil engineers, etc., but it also involves something like 300 trade associations, the steel, the concrete, the masonry, the asphalt, the roofing people. They have a sustainability committee, and they incidentally are now organizing an initiative dealing with mitigation of and adaptation to climate change. So this becomes another way of pulling together the building community. And I think when we say building community, we want to think of building as a verb, not as a noun. It applies to the horizontal infrastructure as well as the vertical.
Good one. Yeah. Thank you. Questions? Okay. Got one over here and one here. Do we have a microphone going around? Oh, you're already ready. Great. Robbie.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentations. I enjoyed them very much. So I'll start with my question, and then I'll give you my explanation for why I'm asking. My question is there competition about the use of and the meaning of sustainability within your organizations? Is this a controversial thing, or is there debate about this? And the reason I'm asking is I teach Introduction to Urban Planning, and I have done research on different syllabi, right? How do instructors teach sustainability within the context of urban planning? Usually the lesson about sustainability is this chapter 3/4 of the way through the curriculum, and it's a very segregated discussion. You know, it's an addendum to other stuff. And I noticed in both the APA and ASCE, my assumption is that, right, you have these divisions where you have a group of people that focus on sustainability. And on one hand, of course, that seems important, right? You have people that are focused on this issue, and it can't be everything, right? Sustainability can't permeate the entire organization. Or maybe it could, right? So I wonder if there is within your organization's competition about how much space this concept takes up. If it's everything, then it could also mean nothing, but if it's isolated, it might not have much power. It might be competing with other things. So I was hoping you could reflect on that.
Rob, you want to take it first?
I don't know if competition's the right word more than struggle with how to, like you said, even in writing the sustainability policy guide in the draft we're working on, where do you stop and other expertise start? We can write policies regarding sustainable economy, correct? But what does that mean? Where does the sort of the sustainability piece stop and the economic expertise start? And really, that's a real sort of it's a struggle, yeah. Right? It's not really necessarily a competition, and I think it's more about how do we create the processes, and I really like the idea of how do we create the right project, because it's not necessarily that to address these topics you really need an interdisciplinary set of voices, or it's got to be a collaborative project management approach. So it's not so as you're trying to make decisions in thinking about how do we make everything sustainable, it's putting the voices around a table that every sort of aspect or stakeholder is asking the same question in their own way and in their own area. So the economist is asking it, the housing person is asking it, the road master is asking it. But you're all in more of a collaborative process doing your own things and your own expertise, but it's really a collaborative decision-making process or a project management process where I think as the associations we're trying to provide resources of how to do that and break the silos down, because in the decision makers in most of the communities, the road decisions are very separate from the budget decisions and the planning decisions.
Yeah, to me, this is social sustainability, right? Yeah. So we have this network, the social sustainability network, and we're debating about what this means, and to me this is a really important use of the term or possible definition that I don't think, that is under-discussed, right? That it is about how information is shared and why aren't people focused on the same questions. So thank you.
Just to pick up on that for a moment, we did a conference at the end of a grant we had to kind of examine educational issues for climate change, engineered systems, and society. And the people who were talking about this had to think about several of the people were from engineering firms that worked with cities and states about the issues that they faced with respect to infrastructure in the face of climate change. And infrastructure, you want it to be there for 30 to 50 years. So what you decide to put in place in the face of a great many unknowns is a difficult situation. And the engineers who were often the project managers would say that one of their issues was how to get the different silos of the agencies, the city agencies that had responsibilities in for these various domains of infrastructure to talk to each other. And then how much less talk to the city leadership, much less talk between cities or outside of a political jurisdiction. So, and that is part and parcel of social sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great comments. Great comments.
To speak to some of the conflicts that we see, if we go back historically, one of the things that one of my colleagues pointed out was the first time that the question of sustainability came to the ASCE board. This was back in the 90s. One board member said, "Don't talk about sustainability, that's killing babies." So we've had to deal with attitudes like that. And a pervasive attitude that we have when we talk to our practicing engineers is, don't bother me with that. My job is to do what the architect or the owner wants at the least cost. Very narrow view of the profession. But one issue that we do see as we talk about it throughout our society, and incidentally a large number of our institutes have sustainability committees as well as our local sections, is to give equal weight to the social and the economic aspects. I've heard a couple of talks here today, here this week, where sustainability was looked at as improving the environment and dealing with the social and the economic constraints, rather than trying to improve the whole triple bottom line for the system. So I think we need that broad thinking. And of course, when we get into academia with its silos and the turf that each professor has, it's often very difficult of how can you put sustainability into the curriculum. You'd have to take my course out. And that becomes a very severe problem. And again, as I said at the beginning, I think it's important that we address sustainability at the freshman year so that we can build on these concepts throughout the whole curriculum.
Thank you. All right, we have one question here and we have two waiting. So shall we take one more here and then we'll maybe finish up with these two?
That sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to firstly say thank you for being here. As a student, it's very inspiring to see just how much progress is being made with the National Academy, with APA, with ASCE, and it's just wonderful to have you here and talking to us. Secondly, I would like to address the Lansing question. As a student working through the current curriculum, I completely understand the difficulties of getting courses to match up. Dr. Tempest is my advisor, and I'm sure he is sick of my emails just trying to get courses to count for each other. Taking Dr. Boyer's class, trying to get that to count as an elective. So UNC Charlotte is making great strides in trying to get that to happen, but I can speak to the difficulties of doing the ABET curriculum and then also trying to tie in other courses. I did want to ask, so this is my actual question. So as a student working through this curriculum and entering the workforce within the next 2 to 3 years or 4, what would you... We'll see. But as I move forward and as other students move forward, what would you suggest to us? So if you were in our shoes, what would you do if you could go back and do it again? And what types of organizations would you look at? Like, as a civil engineer, you often have the choice between government and private sector. So if you could go back and do it all again, what would you do?
You're speaking to a very real problem because we're trying to teach the engineers to, we call it move up the food chain, and just as Rob was saying, get involved with the team that's working at the conceptual stage of the project so you can have some influence on doing the right project. That's extremely important, but a lot of engineering companies aren't working at that level. And they don't get involved in the project until it comes to the detailed design stage. And you have very little opportunity for influence. And we're going to have problems advising students like yourself who come out of there wanting to work on these issues of do the right project, and if you go to work for a company where they're not concerned with that at all, you're not going to be very happy with the work. So it's going to be, I think, necessary to pick a company that has an outlook that is consistent with yours so that you get a chance to grow with the organization. Now, I've got a grandson who's in finance, but he was very happy when he got his first job out of college that was with a relatively small firm so that he was with the chief financial officer 3 or 4 times a week. And I think that's a good parallel for what we need in the planning and the engineering and the architecture, all of the professional disciplines associated with the built environment, to be involved with progressive organizations that are bringing their people along.
Or you could go into academia and teach others. how to get it right.
Well, it's important that we have a marketplace for those we teach.
That's right.
We can't all work in academia.
Right. All right, let me go to these other two. The first one is from Sheila in the UK, and she says, Sequel, CEEQUAL, are developing and piloting an education version of the assessment methodology to give experience and practical application of assessing sustainability for design projects and assignments. This gives awareness of the complexity of the decision-making processes for sustainability and at the same time increases awareness and familiarity of the framework from the grassroots. So I guess that's not a question, Sheila, that's a comment. On how you're using assessment as a teaching tool, teaching about assessment. So I'm going to, it says she's typing, so I'm going to go to the OSU Oregon question, and then if Sheila wants to append an actual question to that comment, we'll let her do that. From OSU, this question is for Robert. Okay, fair warning. Can you talk about how the APA deals with scale? By which I mean, how do you think about citywide or statewide planning and recognize the diverse expectations and needs of particular communities?
Going back to the comprehensive planning standards that I walked through, there are, state law has particular aspects that are required to touch on. So land use, transportation, the natural environment, housing, et cetera, and they all follow a similar set of topics. So our mandate in terms of planning is usually that's at least set in state law. I think where we have a lot of room and innovation is in how we have people participate. And like I mentioned before, utilizing particularly new technologies and moving out of just the town hall meeting, but online tools, even things called meeting in a box, where you have groups have their own meetings and send their results in to be compiled in larger databases. So we can obviously planning needs to bring together and build consensus. So you have this whole activity happening of consensus building. But if we reach to these broad communities, so we're actually hearing what are the real problems, that's how we have to design the participatory process. So we're actually hearing the right problems or hearing the right priorities from these respective groups, whether it's a city, statewide, at the various scales. It's the same, essentially the same model. To get that participation piece right. But then I think the other and then we obviously have to do the required legal framework for a comprehensive plan to actually address and integrate everything. But I think on the back end, where planning has failed consistently, has been not being aggressive enough on the implementation piece and the monitoring piece. We have grand visions, we build consensus around these ideas, build up expectations, and there have been many successes too, but I think where we are always pushing to improve is how do we create the catalytic projects, the short-term, medium-range, long-term things that actually progress and put things in place where people can see change. People can change in their communities, or at the broader, leadership can take credit for some early wins that builds momentum and builds a movement of planning success and community improvement. So I think that's how I would answer how it needs to be done and how we have to integrate the various scales. It's really the same sort of set of tools and models. It's just how do you execute them well and make sure you have that broad participation. Otherwise, you're answering the wrong problem in some cases.
Right, great comment, thank you, thank you. All right, let's see, Sheila says, that her comment was a recommendation for the same to be done for Envision to embed sustainability in education in civil engineering courses. So Oh, I see what you're saying, Sheila. I'm sorry. So I think what she's recommending is that there be an element of Envision incorporated into sustainability education, in engineering education. So I've certainly told Brett this, so now you have it, you know, officially, Brett. Envision's got to go into your course. So, what?
Yeah, and the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure has an academic committee.
Yes.
We find, you know, most civil engineering programs require a capstone design course. And we find Envision and LEAD being very extensively used in these capstone design courses.
And Chris Zerbeck in our team has also been using Envision in her course, so she's a great resource if anyone wants to hear about how that's done.
If anybody's teaching courses, the ISI has great resources on the website, and they have PowerPoints you can use right in the class and everything.
Yes, Brett is commenting that on the Envision website there are great education resources for those wanting to teach Envision in their courses. All right, how are we doing on time? We probably need to wrap it up. We have one last question. Okay.
It's part comment, part question. And I'm sorry, Rachelle, I got in late. I didn't get to hear your talk, but shortly after I sat down, Robert said exactly what I was thinking as I was driving here from Mount Holly. I was thinking about, I want to take pictures of my city, things that I love about my city, and things that we need to work on. And that just sort of thought just popped into my head as I was driving, because I've been looking for excuses to start doing photography again, just for fun. And so when you said people need to take pictures, you know, encouraging people to take pictures of things they like and find, you know, desirable in their community, it just made me think about how the process of strategic planning that all of your organizations have been through as you've integrated this social sustainability piece into the ethics and the planning and the documentation and the education recommendations that you're making to professionals in your respective fields. I'm wondering how much collaboration is going on, both in the planning, in that planning for those strategic recommendations, and then in an ongoing way within your organizations. So collaboration between maybe your organizations and each other, or your organizations and other organizations that are really focused on the social. So I'm an anthropologist, so the American Anthropological Association, or the American Psychological Association, or organizations like that. If there's any kind of collaboration going on an ongoing basis or on a one-off basis, and how might we start looking at doing the kind of collaboration that's happening here within our professional organizations on these questions of sustainability?
Well, I'll mention one. There are a number of professional societies that are professional societies of professional societies. So in engineering, for instance, there's the American Engineering Society Association.
American Association of Engineering Societies.
American Association of Engineering Societies. So, and so certainly for an issue, it would be interesting to communicate with them about whether, and I'm sure, I think they have taken up the topic of sustainability, but it would be interesting to communicate with them about what's going on. I also, in the social science arena, there's the consortium of COSA, the Consortium of Social Science Associations, which is a kind of a policy making, I think it may be even an advocate for, an advocacy organization for the social sciences, and a lot of social science professional societies, the American Anthropological Association, the geographers, the economists, you just run the sociologists, just run down the list. They were very much involved in the decade of the brain or the year of the brain, or because the cognitive scientists are all interested in that. So it would be interesting. I don't know that they've thought about this issue of sustainability in the light of science and technology policy needs, or something that the social science professional societies should focus on. But it certainly would do no harm and might do a great deal of good to ask what's going on.
I think there are a lot of conversations happening. I think one of the things that we're even struggling with today is, you know, whether it's in my association versus sort of the engineering associations, having a common language. Because while we're talking about sustainability, that is incredibly broad. And I think to get interdisciplinary, more theme-based meetings and associations have been emerging. Things like Revolution and Green Build. Are there these sort of explosive just activities around these particular sort of topical areas? But so I think if we want to be able to advance the interdisciplinary conversations, sort of needing to sort of come to agreement on maybe common language or even specific topics that we could probably use as vehicles to advance those conversations faster.
Dick, you want to add anything to that?
I think that pretty well covers it.
Well, I think we have used our time wisely. I think this was a very rich presentation and set of questions and answers. So I'm very grateful to all of you for making your way to Charlotte to be with us for this event. Thank you so much.